All right, so remember in class we talked about trying to learn multiplying two negatives in a few different ways, and one of the ways we did was to use grammar and just talk about like what this sentence is saying and how things cancel each other out. So what am I really saying here? I will not go to the mall today. Well, since I'm saying I will not, that means whatever is following next, I'm not going to do. I'm going to do the opposite of it. And since I'm saying another not, that means I actually am going to the mall today. So I will go to the mall today. I don't have no money. Well, once again, when I'm saying I don't, and then I'm saying have no money, that means I'm saying that I do have money. So I do have money. He didn't say nothing to me. He didn't say nothing. So that means he did. Whoops. He did say something to me. So if you guys can see this, how grammatically that the two knots are cancel each other out, and that it's actually saying the opposite. We can kind of think about that when we talk about multiplying two negatives, because these are double negations, and so are the multiplying two negatives, where they just end up canceling each other out. And we're going to show you. So remember, I showed you this grammatically, and then let me go through one more other way of showing you. And then we also learn opposites on the number line. So we know that when we're talking about the opposite of 12, well, if 12 is here, we're looking for the number that's the same distance away from 0 on the other side of the number line. So here it's 12 units from 0. So that means the other number on the other side that is 12 units away is our opposite. So negative 12 is the opposite of positive 12. Here, if we're doing the opposite of the opposite, well, we know then that 12's opposite is going to be negative 12. So this first one is giving us the answer of negative 12, but then we're taking the opposite of that answer, which means we're going backwards and going back toward 12. So the opposite of 12, we're actually doing a full loop. We're finding the opposite, and then on our way back, we're finding the opposite of that. So you see, we're performing a full loop for it. So same thing. What's the opposite of 25? Well, we know we're looking for the number that's on the other side of 0. That's the same distance. So that's going to give me negative 25. And once again, if we're doing the opposite of 25, well, we're going to have that full loop that's happening, because we're first finding our first opposite, which we just did, which is negative 25. And then we're going back and finding the opposite of that number. So we're finishing at our original 25. And remember, we said that if we want to represent the words algebraically, like if I want to translate these sentences into a math problem, we can represent the opposite with using the negative sign. So we can say the opposite of 12, we can say is just the negative of 12. The opposite of 12, we can say is the negative of 12. So if we think about this, well, when we had one negative, it changed the sign of whatever that number was. It was positive 12, and now it gave us the answer of negative 12. When we had the two opposites, it was a negative and negative, it gave us back our original. So that shows that these two negatives are canceling each other out and giving us that positive back. Same thing here. We see that it's just 1, so we can represent that as the opposite of 25. So then it's multiplying. We think of it, this we can think about as negative 1 times 25. So it's giving us that negative 25, because we have one grouping of 25 groups of negative 1, if we want to think about it like that. Here, the opposite of 25. So once again, we see that we have those two negative signs, and they're canceling each other out, essentially like the negations did with the grammar. So then it's 25. So here we would know be the opposite of 18. So they cancel each other out, and it gives me just a positive 18 as our answer. All right, so we talked about this in a few different ways, and let me just go through a few problems with you now. All right, so the first one I just want to go over just kind of the opposite of 1. So we know that these are going to cancel each other out, and it's just going to give us 1 as our answer, but let's just show it algebraically. So now we have the opposite of 1. So here I can simplify this and just say, okay, well, let's just imagine that we had the negative times 1. When there's no number written in front of this parentheses, we can understand it to be 1. So negative 1 times 1, well, we know based on the rules that we just learned that opposite sign, so negative times positive, is going to give me that negative because it's repeated addition. And we have 1, 1, so it's going to be negative 1. So this now becomes negative times negative 1. And here we now can say, well, since there's no number written there, we understand that it's 1. So we're saying negative 1 times negative 1. So this is establishing the rule for us now as well, that, well, negative 1 times negative 1, we know that the opposites are going to cancel each other out. So it's going to be positive 1 as my answer. All right, so it's just showing you the rule again. Now we're just going to do one more problem, and that'll be it for this video. All right, so if we have -8 times -7, so here we know that we can, when we see two negatives, we can think about them as opposites of each other. I mean, it's not really that per se, because that's not what this is right now. But we can just think about that rule, and we can apply it to here, that a negative times a negative gives me positive. So we know that this is going to give me a positive as an answer. And 8 times 7 is going to give me 56. So our answer is positive 56. When you are doing this, the common mistake that people do is, because we do -8 plus -7, that this will give me -15, that they confuse these two rules together. So when you're doing problems, make sure you're identifying, well, what are we doing? Are we multiplying or are we adding? Because when we have the two signs, it's going to be a little bit different with it. So just make sure, because here it should make sense that when it's the same sign, that it's got to be negative when we're adding, because we're moving further on our number line to the left. So just make sure you guys are establishing, well, what are we doing with it?